Hey there, friends. Brian King here. I posted something on Facebook yesterday that I got some pushback from, and that's bound to happen. When you post something that is a little controversial and people don't agree with it, they have emotional response, they're going to respond very honestly. And that's what I experienced on this post. Let me read to you what I wrote. I wrote, instead of changing your pick to a black square, show the world how you've changed your mind. Now, what that's in response to is something that I first saw on Instagram called Blackout Tuesday. The idea was that you were going to change your profile to just a black square as opposed to your picture so that somebody would see all of these black squares and realize that, hey, there's solidarity, we're in this together, and so on. And I saw it carried over onto Facebook as well. But what I didn't see is anything that was actionable, anything that was going to make the long-term difference. And I have a master's in social work. I learned a lot about advocacy and community organization. And one thing I participated in when I was, I think in my undergrad, something had happened in one of the local communities. And there was some outrage and they wanted to protest. So we reached out to the community. There was a community organization that organized a march, and the march happened in a particular neighborhood. But the march is as far as it went. They marched, they were seen, they chanted, they had signs, and then they all went home. There was no plan for moving forward, for making long-term change. And my concern about something like changing the squares to black is that it's purely symbolic. And it's nice and it's reassuring for people in the black community to see, okay, there are a lot of these people who support us and who are there with us in theory, symbolically, but what's the plan? It's like one of the issues I have with awareness days, where different nonprofits will spend lots of money on 3-color brochures and these big marketing pushes on social media, and then they sit back and hope this changes things. I hope things get better. I saw this with a lot of the marches earlier this year or even late last year, some of the women's marches. Now, keep in mind, I'm being very honest here in that I haven't really done comprehensive research to know whether anything happened beyond those marches. But when it comes to something like racism, and there's no question that it is sewn so tightly into the fabric of our culture that it's probably going to take another 100 years before we get it out of our system. But in the meantime, what will you as an individual do to change the way things have always been? What am I going to do? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out to my black friends and I'm going to have a heart-to-heart conversation with them where I'm going to spend a lot of time shutting up and listening and ask them to tell me, what can I do to change things? Because I have probably as many blind spots, if not more, than anybody else does. And I was raised by relatives who had very strong opinions about racial differences. And that might be in there crawling around. I want to be called out on that so I can change it. How do I change my beliefs? How do I change my behavior? Who do I talk to that's in a position of authority? How do I put meaningful leverage on them in order to get them to take it seriously and change? That does a lot more than a black square. Now, if you want to put a black square on there to demonstrate solidarity so people see you as somebody who wants to be part of the solution, what are you going to do next? Because Blackout Tuesday is done. We're on a Wednesday now. Are you going to change the photo back to your profile and go on your merry way, stick your head in the sand? Are you going to talk with your friends about how awful it is, but you're not going to create any kind of plan for how you can take action in your community within your peer group to start changing minds, changing hearts, changing behavior? You need an action plan. You need a plan to move forward, even one action step. Otherwise, putting a black square on your profile with no other plan to change is insulting to the cause. You have to do something better. That's how it's going to change. So some of the criticism I got was, you can't tell people how to protest. Yeah, actually, I can. It's called freedom of speech. What I was pointing out is, I'm not saying you're not protesting correctly. People were trying to chalk it up to the same criticism the black community got, where you can't be aggressive, you can't do this, you're protesting incorrectly. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't stop with symbolism. Have a plan to take action. Like I've said a couple times now, have a plan to take action that's actually going to change things. What action are you going to take? Because as much as you're criticizing the leaders, and man, do they deserve it, change is going to start with you. It always does. How are you going to change the way you show up in this world so that you can eliminate racism layer by layer? Get it out of your heart, out of your thinking, out of your spirit. That's the kind of plan you need to start coming up with. And so do I. I'm working on it. And you also need to come up with the plan that you want to invite other people into. Talk about it. Tell people what your plan is. Ask them to hold you accountable. Otherwise, you're just throwing something out there because you're trying to be part of the action, but you really aren't planning on doing anything else. So I hope this clarifies the post and adds some more context and depth to it. I want to keep having this conversation. It's too important not to. Teach me, correct me, educate me so I can be better. And hopefully in our conversations with each other, with people in power, and especially with members of the black community, have those conversations so that we can all become better people, better human beings, and so that we can finally begin to actualize the promise of this country. So thank you for tuning in and being part of the conversation. Thank you for your efforts. And remember, no matter what happens, you're good enough. And thanks for being you.